2013 commemorates the centenary of the South African Land Act, a piece of legislation which would go on to become key in the formation of the country's apartheid system. 100 years on, the 1913 Land Act continues to impact the spatial, societal and economic circumstances of millions of South Africans.
Well, the Land Act was something which made it impossible for black South Africans to own or buy land in what was designated as white South Africa. And a fundamental division in our society was then reinforced in law, the division between places where white people lived and worked and owned things and where black people were allowed to do so, effectively helping to set up a migrant labor system and a system in which a portion of society owned and controlled the wealth of the country and another portion, the great majority, just worked to provide that minority with their wealth.
This past week, the University of Cape Town hosted a 3-day conference which aims to understand the complexities around land reforms in the country.
So the big theme of the conference is the history of division, of creating a number of divides in our society. Those were both spatial and in terms of where people lived, but they were also in terms of farming systems and use of the land. They were legally divided, and of course they were also governed under different governance arrangements, so-called traditional leaders in rural areas.
Themes under discussion include motivation, both economical and cultural, following land distribution. Dr. Gladman Tondlana has spent several years in the Kalahari studying the land claims of the San people.
Part of the land claimants were involved in using the land in the park for direct use values and traditional values. So they actually used cultural connection to land as a major motivation for the land claim in the park. And the idea being to balance the ecological needs of the park and also the livelihood needs.
More concerns have arisen around potential conflict once the land has been redistributed.
But what has been coming out is that soon after these claimants have logged the land claim, they actually disintegrate into different conflicts, over the meaning of resources or what the land could offer to their livelihood needs. So this has been one of the major issues coming out of these land claims. And what I've seen from this conference is that this has been the same issue across different case studies in South Africa, be it in the protected areas and outside protected areas.
Zimbabwe's land reform policies have dominated headlines and research over the past decade. A large part of the conference was dedicated to the analysis of redistribution in South Africa's northern neighbour and how these apply to the country's own processes.
So one of the lessons for South Africa is if they want a land redistribution, but they want to maintain the best farmers, they need to think how they're going to do this. The second thing that we have to look at is that Zimbabweans we've been so amazed, Zimbabweans have a passion for farming. They are prepared to work hard, they give up their families and life in the city and they move out and they work on the farm and they make a success of it. Are there 500,000 South African would-be farmers who are willing to work hard and make a success and move out into the land? So that's something that South Africa has to think about. And finally, white farmers in both South Africa and Zimbabwe gained huge subsidies, support, training. Is there money in South Africa to provide training and support for these new farmers?
Alongside the Land Divided, the National Eco Museum is hosting an exhibition around the issues of land reform in the medium of photography.
Well, the manifestation of struggles on the land are just a continuation, really, of what's been going on in South Africa for a very long time, escalating in a way in the last year and a half with Marikana incident and strikes in the Western Cape on farms. We've brought this up to date in the exhibition, and under a concept called Today, we reflect on that. So it's not just a historical overview. It tries to, continue the conversation.
By the end of 2012, land reform had transferred just 7.5% of formerly white-owned land, far behind the government's target of 30%. Discussions such as Land Divided will go some way towards helping policymakers and the public understand the complexities of land reform.